morning, everybody. This is Erin LaFave from Full Circle Herbals, herbalist and plant priestess. And it is 7 a.m. in the morning right now here. I am, excuse me, doing a quick live before the kids wake up because else it's mayhem. So I wanted to show you some plants that are up in the yard. And there's two here that can be confused with one another. Oh, let's see here. Okay, so this is plantain, and this is wood violet. So these are pretty common in our area, and plantain is the one that's used a lot for soothing skin irritations, rashes. I use it for bee stings. As soon as there's a bee sting, I take the plantain leaf and I rub it in between my hands because I'm trying to crush it. And then when I crush it, if I can add a little bit of water to help get a little bit more of a paste going, then I add that right to the bee sting. I just kind of pack that little ball right on the bee sting. And many people have said that it helps right away. It helps that bee sting right away. And I've used it myself on bee stings. And so this one is used a lot. If you cut it up really fine and then put it in some oil, olive oil, or any other kind of oil that's okay on the skin, you let this sit in there for about 4 weeks, and then you have a nice oil with the plantain properties in it. So this is a plantago species. There's many of them throughout the world, but this one's in the yard. And it lays very flat on the ground, comes right out of the ground, attaches right to the ground. The only type of stem-looking thing that it ever gets is it only gets like a little spike that has flowers on it. So the flower is very green and doesn't have much of a color at all. But that little spike is just the flower, and that's it. So pretty much it's just the leaves coming out of the ground. Very, very common here. Lots of people try to kill it in their lawn, but I love it for using in salves for skin irritations and things like that. And people do eat them too sometimes. So if you pull it apart, there is typically, it's going to be very hard to see on the screen, but there right now I can see a vein. Let me just see if I can get it closer. See that little tiny thread thing hanging out there? That is kind of a nice identification feature of plantain. It has the veins, the vascular system of that of the leaf. It's very strong. So they're used to being stepped on. So these leaves are very, very tough and hard. So, and when people try to put them in salads and stuff, you want to get them as small as possible. So that's plantain. What else can you do with plantain? The other thing I do with plantain is I'll let this wilt a little bit to get some of the water content out of it before I chop it up and put it in the oil. Because if there's too much water, then you can get a little bit of mold growing in the oil. That's just what happens when water gets trapped in oil, and if there's any dirt or impurities in there. So if you let this wilt for a few hours to let some of that water come out, that can help. After I'm done with the oil, I usually, after it's infused for about 4 weeks or so, then I'll add some beeswax to it and to harden it up to have more of a salve. So usually the rule is 1 cup of oil and 1 ounce of beeswax, and you melt those two together, and then it'll stiffen up and harden. So the other one I have here is wood violet, and it usually has the shape of like a heart kind of at the bottom here. See, the leaves come way far down here. So wood violet is pink and white and purple here. And these ones, definitely people put these in salads. And again, the smaller the better, because they get too stiff and hard if they get older, which is not my favorite in a salad. So they add just some nutrients to it, and the flowers are definitely edible. So there is another violet here that some people call it wood violet, and it's a yellow one. That's not the one I'm talking about right now. This is the this is the purples and the whites and things like that. So here's wood violet in comparison to that plantain. Plantain has a pointed leaf, and this one has there's a little bit of a point up here, but it has very round lobes down here. And the flowers are very distinctive. Now the flowers are a spring flower right now, and then they will do another flush of a flower towards the end of the season. So they do 2 of them, but the main flush of flowers is right now in the springtime. So edible flowers, really fun to make candied flowers out of them, where you add a little bit of, people use egg whites and sugar, and there's a lot of tutorials online for that. But you can decorate a cake with them. It's really fun. Put that in some water or a punch or something to make it look pretty. That's always fun to do as well. So again, these are considered weeds by some people in their lawns, but I keep them. I let them grow on my lawn, and it's always green. So I do have to weed them out of my own vegetable garden, my herb gardens, because they start to really take over and they're really prolific. So sometimes they just have to stay in the lawn. So another one of my favorites that grows around here is yarrow. So yarrow looks very fern-like. You see that it's very fern-like. It's very delicate looking, although they are pretty robust. They're pretty tough little critters here, tough little leaves. So that's yarrow. And yarrow gets a very tall flower on it. The native one is white, although there's many different horticulture varieties that have been created over time. There's some pastel colors out there and a pink one. I actually have a pink one in my yard. This comes from the pink yarrow. And I use the pink yarrow just like the white yarrow. And some herbalists don't use the pink yarrow and vice versa. There's, all different kinds of things. But here in North America, usually the white one is the native one. There is a pink variety that's apparently native in Europe, and that they use that one a lot. So I use this one for bleeding. So if I have a cut, and I've done it before in the garden, bleeding pretty good, what I'll do is, again, you can roll them up in your hand and just go like this, and it crushes them and releases the water and all the nutrients in there too. Or you can dry it. It's very easy to air dry. Just put it in a basket or hang it up or something like that, and then crumble it up into a powder, and that powder can be put on a bleeding wound and to help stop it. It is amazing how fast yarrow stops bleeding. It is incredible. The first time I tried it, I couldn't believe it. It was so fast. So I use it just for little cuts on a finger. If it's deeper than, just a little Band-Aid would hold, then I use yarrow. I also use yarrow for pain relieving. So on my Facebook page, you may see that my daughter had a burn from a hot glue gun. One of those, the glue gets on your finger and it's really, really hot. It sometimes doesn't even cause a blister, but hers was a little bit more of a blister type. So what I did is I ran and got the yarrow and the plantain. I just grabbed it right out of the yard. A handful is all I needed. And then I started chopping it up really fine, added it to my mortar and pestle with just a couple drops of water, and I ground it up. And then I added it to her finger and put some gauze over it at the same time to hold it. So it's just a quick, first aid thing, because, it's just nice to have another option for certain issues. And then we put an ice pack on it, of course. But she kept that thing on there for a long time, for a couple hours, actually. I was surprised that she kept it on that long. And I haven't heard a complaint from her since. So that's very good. I've used yarrow for cuts, for burns. It can be added to other pain relieving things too. So it has like this blood, helps stop blood from flowing, and it also alleviates pain on certain, ailments. And so this would be good for a bee sting as well. If you're really in a pinch and you're outside and you maybe have a cut on one hand and can't get inside to do some chopping or have a mortar and pestle, you can put it in your mouth and bite on it a little bit and then add it to the ailment too. So it's chewing on it will also help bring in those qualities as well into the body. So pain relieving can help too. So there you go, yarrow. See, it's just very, it's very hard to, it doesn't have many lookalikes in, in my yard or in the wild. It's very, when you touch it, it's very thick. It's not like a delicate fern. Sometimes those ferns are very like watery and just they feel very delicate, but these are very tough. There's even just a bit of a kind of a coarse hair feel to them as well. So they are bitter. I'm not gonna lie. If you put them in your mouth, it's pretty bitter, but some people really like to just nibble on the small leaves, the new leaves. Alrighty, so we had wood violet, plantain, yarrow, and next is my favorite, nettles. Here we go. Nettle, see how toothed that is? And they're very pointy. There is a plant called wood nettle that has much wider leaves, not as thin as these ones are. So there are hairs on these, probably hard to see. I'm just trying to get that to focus. Not going to, probably. Let's try again. Come on, focus camera. Nope. So the hairs on here are the ones that poke and sting. So that's the stinging nettle part of it. And the cool thing is, like, I can see them right now and they're fairly sticking out straight. So what you can do is just delicately touch it in such a way that you're pulling up on those hairs, and you'll break those hairs. I'm breaking them right now. And then they don't sting. So the first grab is the kind of tricky one, but if you just kind of get in there and pull up and find where it's very new growth, that's kind of the softest hairs there. So now that I've broken those hairs, definitely can hold it, and that would be a good spot to break it with your hands. Or if you had like some gloves or something, you could rub that part off too and do it if you wanted. But that's just a little trick on how to use that. Oh, there's a little green guy on there. I got a little green, I don't know what he is. Some sort of worm. There's a little worm on there. He looks like a leaf, but he's not. There he is. He's moving. Okay, so nettle. This is the top of the nettle. Very nice and succulent green. The other characteristic of this plant is it's got these little bracts. They look like little leaves. Maybe they are a type of leaf. I can't remember, but they have these little appendages on them that stick out. Maybe I can post a picture because it's not coming through on the camera very well. So I love stinging nettle. I love it dried actually, and I put an ounce of dried nettle into a quart of boiling water and I let it steep for about 4 hours or more, and then I drink it. That is my favorite way to use nettle. Put honey in it. Some people put maple syrup, peppermint, anything if you want to add something to the nettle infusion. Some people take it and just steam it like this. You just steam it, cook it a little bit, saute it, whatever you want to do, and then you can eat it. It takes that sting away. It bursts those hairs open, and it doesn't bother you then after that. That doesn't bother me anyway. Most people that eat it. I've never heard of anybody having an allergy or a problem from eating nettle, but I'm sure, like any other food that you try for the first time, just try a little bit and see how it works. But yeah, so you cook it or dry it, and it takes the sting out of it. I have met people who make like a pesto out of the fresh stuff. They just grind, food process it until it's into a puree and all pulped out, and they said there's no sting either. I have not tried it that way, but I have seen that done. The other thing, people like to chop this up and add it to like omelets and eggs. It's very, very similar to spinach in taste and use. So, except most people don't make a tea out of it, out of spinach, but tea out of nettle is excellent. You can even find tea bags in the store too. There are some that are commercially bagged up too, so you can use it that. But I really like it when it's very steeped for a long time. It gives it a very hearty flavor. And so it's got a ton of nutrients in it. If you go to the USDA nutritional information and you can type in any food, and it'll give you the total nutritional value and amino acid panel and all, every nutrient, vitamin, mineral that's found in it. Nettle is in there too. It's called steamed nettle. So it's in there. It's been eaten for a long, long, long time. I've met lots of people who, say their grandparents used to eat it, or people who remember eating it in the spring. So it's one of those first ones that come out. It will get really tall. Right now it's only about a foot or so tall, and that's my favorite time to pick it because they're very green and succulent and tender, and not so stingy, because these hairs are very they're very new and tender, so they're much more easy to handle. Now, as we get later into the season, maybe September, maybe even August, September, they get taller and taller. They can be up to like 5 feet or more, and the hairs become more coarse and they just become more and more aggressive. And that's when I usually get stung by them, is that later in the year. These leaves will start to get smaller, actually. They will get very, very narrow, and that's because they will get a flower on them. It's a very small, not showy flower because it's a wind pollinated, and it comes out and it kind of arcs a little bit, and it just kind of sits there. After those flowers come out and turn to seed, then all the leaves get a little bit smaller and not as green. They usually kind of get a little bit more pale, because all of the energy from the plant went into the flowering stage and then into the seed stage. So I use nettle for seasonal allergies. It's very effective, works very fast for me. Within half an hour to an hour of taking the nettle, I get relief from congestion and things like that. It's also very high in like iron and stuff, so it's very good on that front. When I had some platelet issues with my second child, well, I've had platelet issues with both, but it was pretty bad with my second child, and I needed to get those platelet counts up, and so I was doing spinach, orange juice, because when you do iron and vitamin C, you need to do vitamin C with it to help break it down, and then I did nettle infusions as well. So not sure exactly what thing helped, but my platelet numbers did go up into a healthy range. And so I don't know. That's my success story with nettles and platelets. If your platelets are too low and you need a C-section, well, then they say they have to just totally knock you out and you can't be aware at all. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I had 2 C-sections, and I did not at least want to be knocked out for it. I wanted to be present for that. So I think nettle helped out. Maybe some people wouldn't agree, but that's okay. So nettle, what else is nettle used for? The seeds are actually an adrenal tonic. It helps with the adrenal system. And then the roots are used for prostate health. So, and I don't use the seed or the root at this time. I just use the leaf. You can actually use the whole stem part of it. So if I harvest it after it's bloomed, which is rare, but sometimes I do because I want a really good supply for the winter, then I will really be picky about what I'm going to take. And sometimes at that point, after the flowers have gone, I'll just clip off the leaves because I don't want the stem. That stem gets very fibrous the older it gets, and they actually use it for making fibers, making ropes out of using the stem, because it's just very, very robust. So that's our nettle. How green it is. Perfectly green. Karen's saying, I only find purple dead nettle in my yard. Yeah, we have something that's called Creeping Charlie. And sometimes Creeping Charlie and purple dead nettle can look similar, except Creeping Charlie is a little bit more, I would say, delicate looking than purple nettle or purple dead nettle. The purple dead nettle that I'm thinking about gets a much bigger leaf, creeps along the ground, and gets a much bigger flower. but Creeping Charlie's in my yard as well, or Creeping Jenny, some people call it that too. And that one is actually used for like kind of more of a detox or liver help. Get the lead out is kind of what the phrase I learned with that one. Okay, one more plant here. Starting to wilt a little bit since I picked her. So this is motherwort, and it's got, I don't know if you can hear this, but it's got hairs on it, and it's very, very soft. And you can see those beautiful shaped, almost like a maple leaf. They've got these little indentations way deep down here, and then nice, soft looking rounded lobes throughout. It's also got a square stem. It's square because it's in the mint family, and opposite leaves. So motherwort is used to ease mother tension and anxiety, heart palpitations, people with like grief that's really settling in the heart. Motherwort would be good for this. Pretty easy one to find around here, very easy. It's a weed, considered, you know, a weed in terms of people don't want it growing everywhere. Very, very common. I mean, it'll grow in the ditches, it'll grow everywhere. It just pops up by itself. It gets this wonderful spike on it of flowers that are very tiny, and they're pink. And if you look at them very closely, they're just so cute. But they get a spike of them all up and down. Once those flowers are done, they actually, it will turn into a very spiky, like a spiky appendage. So you'll get these beautiful, soft looking pink flowers, and then everything will dry up and turn into really sticky, spiky little balls on there. So then the leaves look much different on the top. When that plant flowers, they actually get a much narrower leaf, and then they get like 3 little spikes on those leaves, so they look different. So it can change, you know, its look. But these leaves will be very close to the base of the plant, and then that spike of a flower will come up, and those new looking leaves will come on that. So this one is best, well, a lot of people will take the fresh as it's just in flower, and then chop it up and put it in some alcohol and let it steep for about 4 weeks, and that will make a tincture that you can take for anxiety and things that I just mentioned. So what else can I say about this one? You could also dry the leaves and use it in tea if you want. This one would be one that you would want to try a little bit slowly, because it is for used to ease tension and anxiety, and you just want to make sure how it feels to your body and make sure it doesn't overly sedate you. But it works. I would say it's in the system, and it doesn't like stay for hours and hours. You do have to keep dosing yourself depending on the type of anxiety you're having. If it's really bad, then you may have to do every 15 minutes, or maybe you're doing every hour. But again, it's one that you want to check into before you start using it, just because, you know, you just don't know how it's going to affect you. But for most people, it's very gentle and mild. And if they're in the middle of a panic attack, they'll use this one, and it will help ease that panic attack right there. But of course, you don't want to just go off and driving somewhere in the car or something like that. Yeah. So, or if you're just having just a little bit of general anxiety, this one might be able to help too. I don't typically use this one because I found that it makes me a little bit, I would say more like a low blood pressure feel, and that's because it can affect blood pressure a little bit. For people who have high blood pressure, it helps. Apparently, I don't have high blood pressure, but I tend to be on the lower range of the normal blood pressure, and I've just noticed that when I take it, it's kind of makes my ears ring and things like that. Now, that was only in tincture form. I haven't tried it lately, And so I may want to try it again for like in a tea or something. And it's just so prolific here and easy to find that would be great if people could learn how to use it in a way that worked for them, because lots of people experience anxiety, whether they even admit it or not. Anxiety is not just in panic attack form. It can be irritability, stomach aches, all sorts of things. But this is just one that if you're looking to study some herbs and study one around you, and if you have motherwort around you, this would be a fun one to start. It is an emmenagogue, which means it can start menses or make them a little bit stronger. So some people who need to start their menses, maybe if they're delayed or they're just really sluggish, they may want to try this one too. But it's not one to take while you're pregnant, trying to get pregnant, think you might be pregnant, because a larger doses of this can, you know, maybe induce. So just this one's more of a medicinal plant. The other ones that I've shown are a little bit more benign, like nettle. I consider this a food plant. Very good. Plantain, using for salves topically mostly, you know, really easy to use. Wood nettle, the flowers are edible, and so are the leaves. And oh, and one more thing about wood nettle, not wood nettle, yeah. No, wood violet. Wood violet is used in eczema and psoriasis type salves as well, because it just soothes skin irritations a lot. And then our yarrow, used topically as well, is pretty benign. This one's just a little bit more medicinal type, and you just want to check into it a little bit more. But some people will just nibble on a leaf or something too. All right, so there's 5 of them. Just checking the chats right now. All right, so those are my little friends that I want to show you today. And then what I want to talk about quickly now is the offers that I have right now. I have the Learning Herbalism Toolkit going on that will close on Friday for the registration, and then we start on Sunday. It runs for 5 weeks with a break in there because I'll be at the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference presenting. And then I'll do 4 more webinars, one in May, June, and probably July and August. And it'll be on plant identification, medicinal trees and shrubs, and then what's the other one I have? Plant ID, medicinal trees and shrubs. Oh my gosh, I forgot the 3rd one. And then we'll do a 4th one as well. So the options are out there. I do have a new option for payment, and that is $25 payments, 8 of them. So if you need a little bit of a smaller payment plan, and I just put that one up there. I should probably put some details on that so people know. And so this one is the payment plan for $25 at 8 times. If you go to the website, which I'll put up here in a little bit too, then you can see that there's a one-time payment of $149 and then another payment plan of $55 for 3 payments. So the Learning Herbalism Toolkit, you'll get the How to Learn Herbalism e-course, which is 5 weeks. You get the 4 webinars, and you'll get the Learning Herbalism Workbook. So all 3 of those for the toolkit. Some people already have the workbook, and they want to know if there's a discount for that. So if you already have the workbook, the price still stands the same. If you've already paid for the How to Learn Herbalism e-course or the How to Learn Plant Spirit Medicine, I've had two classes of How to Learn Herbalism and How to Learn Plant Spirit Medicine. Pretty much they're the same thing. And it used to always be pre-recorded, but I'm doing it live this time. And if you've already paid for any of those classes that I just mentioned, you're already in for the e-course. So the people who've already paid those e-courses before and been in the pre-recorded ones, they get it for free. They've already paid, they're in for life. So that's kind of how it is with the How to Learn Herbalism e-course. Every time I do another round of it, if you've been a former person who've paid and been in, then you're in. So if you've paid for those e-courses, you'll also get the free webinars as well. And then the workbook you'll have to purchase on your own, and you can find that on Amazon and things like that. So what else? There's some people who are members of the Plant Priestess Circle, and they, if they're an Explorer membership level, they do have to pay for the e-course, and those details are in the Plant Priestess Circle membership Facebook page. What else here? And then there's the people in the Plant Priestess Circle who are correspondence level, and they've already paid and they're in, except that the workbook isn't included. That's a separate one. Yes, so Jenny, if you're in a correspondence level membership, you're already set for the e-course, and the 4 webinars are in there as well, so that you're all already paid up for it when you pay for the correspondence level. So that's all set. If you have questions, let me know. I do have like a frequently asked questions section on the Learning Herbalism Toolkit website, and so so if you want to go there and check out those, all the things I just said for the questions about different levels of payment and stuff are in there. Let's see. So that's the class. The class, the workbook, and the webinars are all rolled into the Learning Herbalism Toolkit. It's the first time I've ever put the toolkit together. The How to Learn Herbalism e-course has always been on its own, and I started that in 2017. Early 2017, and then the workbook came out at last year, end of 2017. So the webinars are going to be live as well, new. And everything will be recorded so that if you miss the live, it'll be there. You'll get into a membership site where all the videos and I have lots of worksheets that you can fill in electronically or print them and use them over and over. They're meant to be used over and over. The plant profiles and all the other worksheets are meant to be used more than once, and they're tools to use as you learn herbalism. The other thing I wanted to offer people today too is, let's see here. I do have, for people who want to just check it out first, I do have the first module. The first lesson is free. So if you go to this link will take you to a free lesson from the e-course. So you'll see the free lesson. Like I said, everything was pre-recorded a while back when I did it for the first time, so that people who pay for the e-course and the whole toolkit will get instant access to all those pre-recorded lessons. So you can see that right now, and I'm trying to look. Where is that? Okay. So that's that. I'm going to. Okay. So that's the e-course, and the How to Learn Herbalism Facebook page, the private Facebook page, you also get in there where, I communicate that way too. I communicate through the membership site and communicate through email. Let's see. Just trying to think of a few other options. So why would you want to join the toolkit, and what's so different about my toolkit versus other courses that are out there? Well, there's a lot of courses, websites, online, books that teach about herbalism, and worksheets that teach about workshops that teach about herbalism. But what I found that I needed when I was learning is something to like guide me through the process, like which things should I focus on, how should I focus on it, what information should I write down, which information should I leave in the book, how do I organize herbal actions versus versus the indications, how much of the growing information should I learn for the herbs. It just was a lot of information out there, and so I started making worksheets to help myself, and I have since started sharing those and putting together in the workbook and the e-course, and then making subsequent ones too that I think would be helpful. So that's why the Learning Herbalism Toolkit is so different, because it teaches people kind of how to study herbalism, where to focus on, what not to focus on. Gives tips on what resources that are out there that I find reliable. I had a hard time deciding which things were reliable and which things weren't, so I'll help guide through that and using the steps that I took to do that. And so you're learning a bit from my experience, and I've met some herbalists actually out there who have published, so that's helped me over time too. And then the thing that was missing from the How to Learn Herbalism is a lot more of, which plant works for which thing. And so that's why I'm adding in the webinars. There's also some of that information in the workbook a little bit. I don't go too deep into some of the plants about how to use the plants in the workbook. It's more of like how to study, and it's a study guide, a guided way of how to study, and gives you ways to start organizing you and keeping you on track. And people have told me these are helping them. That's why I keep doing this. And I used to offer a lot of this stuff for free, but it takes a while to get that stuff on the internet, on the website, put it in a workbook. So that's how it's gone to a paid option. So I'm just always adding things to it, trying to help people stay focused with their studying and not get too overwhelmed. I mean, I get overwhelmed sometimes too when I'm studying a new plant. And so then I pull these tools out that I've made and say, hey, Erin, focus. You know how to do this. You know how to focus. So that's kind of the Learning Herbalism e-course and the workbook in a nutshell. So where are the lives done? I do that through Zoom. It's like a video conferencing webinar tool, and so I'll send you the link, and you always have that link to show up when I do the lives. So you'll be able to ask questions there. And then for those people that sign up for the Learning Herbalism Toolkit, you can send me some emails and Facebook messages, and I'll help you that way too. So I'm a little bit more focused on the students at that time. There is an option if you want even more work with me, more contact one-on-one with me. There is an option for $2.99, I believe it is. And then we have, I'll set up video conferencing or phone calls with you to help keep you focused and help tailor what you're working on for herbalism, and help, I'll guide you based on your situation, because everybody is going to focus on herbalism a little bit different. And sometimes people need a little bit of coaching to decide where that's going to be for their life. So some people really focus on flower essences or the plant identification part of it. I know some people who are really into just to medicine making and don't necessarily know how to identify it in the field, which is, fine too. I tend to like all of it, and especially the teaching part, though. I seem to gravitate towards that. I love to grow things and dry them and make herbal remedies for my family with them too. So that is the lesson and toolkit for you. I'll put the website in the comments too, so you can check that out. Feel free to ask me any questions about it. And yeah, thanks for joining me on this live, and have a good day or night wherever you are in the world. And go out and check out what's in your environment and see what kind of plants you can identify today. Thank you. Bye-bye.